You've heard of legendary tractors built to last generations, but not every machine earns a spot in the Farmer's Hall of Fame. Some tractors promise power, innovation, or unbeatable value, only to deliver headaches, breakdowns, and costly regrets. In this video, we're counting down the 15 worst tractors farmers wish they never bought. Models plagued with design flaws, unreliable engines, poor parts support, or just downright bad performance in the field. Whether you're a seasoned farmer, a vintage tractor fan, or just curious about the industry's biggest letdowns, you're in the right place. From overhyped diesel giants to underpowered compact disasters, these are the machines that many owners wish they could forget. So buckle up as we dig through history's most regrettable tractors. And if you've owned one of these lemons, let us know in the comments. This is 15 worst tractors farmers regret buying and nobody wants back. Number 15. The long 610 had ambitious goals, but it turned into one of the most frustrating setbacks for budget tractor buyers in the 1980s. Marketed as a dependable mid-range workhorse, it instead arrived with underwhelming performance, using a 3-cylinder diesel engine that labored under even moderate loads, frequently overheating and falling short of its rated 60 horsepower. The transmission was clunky, with crude synchro mesh gears that jarred during shifting and often became a weak link within a few hundred hours of use. Its hydraulic system, expected to support loader work and rear implements, proved unreliable. Leaks were common, flow rates were inconsistent, and activation delays turned simple tasks into time-consuming ordeals. The cab, though enclosed in later models, offered minimal comfort, cheap plastic fittings, poor insulation, and a seat so basic that noisy vibrations and rigid shocks wore down operators faster than any fieldwork. Mechanical build quality was inconsistent. Bolt-up panels rattled loose and wiring harnesses chafed prematurely, leading to electrical faults. Compounding these issues was a lack of dealer support and spare parts in rural areas, meaning even small repairs could sideline a 610 for weeks. While the low purchase price was tempting, the reality was full of compromises. Turned bulky and maintenance-heavy, the long 610 proved that cutting costs on engineering and support often yields machines that are cheap to buy but costly to own. Number 14. The John Deere Model A may hold a nostalgic place in tractor history, but in its day it was a rough machine that left plenty to be desired. Introduced in 1934, it featured a 2-cylinder horizontal engine that produced decent torque, but ran rough, loud, and vibrated so severely that long hours left operators physically worn out. The infamous putt-putt sound became its trademark, but the narrow power band made it unforgiving under load. Gear changes were constant, and the lack of live PTO or hydraulics in early models limited functionality. Starting it was an ordeal. Hand cranking was common, and cold starts could turn into exhausting, risky rituals. Steering was stiff and braking uneven, especially on hills, making it a chore to handle safely. The open operator station offered no protection or comfort, just a hard steel seat, exposed controls, and ear-splitting engine noise. The Model A's rear wheels were prone to slippage in wet or uneven soil, and maintenance access was awkward, especially given how frequently tinkering was required. Despite being a symbol of Deere's entry into row crop mechanization, the Model A was far from user-friendly. It may charm collectors today, but for the farmers who depended on it, the Model A often felt more like a necessary battle than a reliable partner in the field. Number 13. The Farmall Model H is often romanticized as a classic, but in practice it was a limited and sometimes frustrating machine for mid-century farmers. Introduced in 1939, it was designed for row crop versatility, yet its 4-cylinder engine, while durable, was underpowered for heavier field tasks, especially as implements grew larger post-war. Early versions lacked live hydraulics and live PTO, which meant frequent stops to raise implements or adjust power, slowing productivity and increasing operator fatigue. The narrow front end, common on many units, made it unstable on uneven ground or hills, creating a rollover risk that haunted operators for decades. The open-air operator station offered no comfort or weather protection, and the seating position left users exposed to noise, dust, and engine heat. Starting the tractor, especially in cold weather, could be a long, frustrating process unless perfectly tuned. Its mechanical brakes were weak and often pulled unevenly, making it challenging to control on slopes or during transport. Even routine maintenance required dealing with stiff linkages and outdated fittings. While the H was dependable in light to moderate tasks, its limitations became clear as farming evolved. For all its popularity, the Farmall H struggled to keep pace, leaving many operators wishing for more power, comfort, and capability. Number 12. The Minneapolis Moline G1355 was supposed to be a heavy-hitting competitor in the high-horsepower tractor class of the early 1970s, but it quickly proved to be one of the most poorly executed machines of its time. Underneath its bold yellow paint was essentially an Oliver 2255 chassis, stuffed with a massive 540 cubic inch Caterpillar VR8 diesel engine. An engine known for raw horsepower, but also for being ill-suited to row crop tractor use. It guzzled fuel at an alarming rate, overheated under moderate loads, and had a tendency to rattle itself apart in warmer climates. The real issue, though, was the drivetrain. Inherited from Oliver's aging platform, it simply couldn't withstand the torque of the Caterpillar engine. Final drives and rear differentials routinely failed under stress, leaving operators with costly and frequent repairs. The steering lacked precision, making field maneuvering a frustrating chore, while the cab offered little protection from noise, heat, or vibration. Delivering a harsh ride that wore out drivers long before the work was done. Serviceability was miserable. The engine bay was overstuffed, parts access was cramped, and mechanics were often reluctant to even touch it. Worse still, parts availability was unreliable, especially as Minneapolis Moline's financial situation worsened. Farmers who invested in the G1355 expecting a field-dominating beast ended up with a maintenance-heavy, fuel-thirsty machine that broke more often than it worked. It was the poster child for mismatched engineering, a tractor that looked powerful on paper but crumbled under real-world demands. Number 11. The early case IH7140 was introduced in the late 1980s as part of the new Magnum series, but it stumbled out of the gate with a range of frustrating issues that undercut its bold reputation. While powered by a robust Cummins 8.3-liter diesel, early units suffered from inconsistent fuel system performance, turbocharger problems, and electronic gremlins that led to erratic engine behavior. The full power shift transmission, a major selling point, often shifted harshly and had calibration quirks that made field operation jerky and tiring, especially during load changes. The hydraulic system lagged behind competitors in flow and responsiveness, making loader or implement work slower and less precise. Cab quality in the earliest builds left much to be desired. Rattles, poor sound insulation, and underwhelming ergonomics disappointed operators expecting comfort from a premium model. Rear-end components also showed signs of stress under heavy drawbar loads, with premature wear in the differential and planetary gears not uncommon. While the 7140 would later become a legendary machine after updates and refinements, those first iterations left many early adopters disillusioned. Rather than setting the standard, the early 7140 felt like an unfinished prototype, full of potential, but riddled with flaws that made daily operation more frustrating than forward-thinking. Number 10. The Yanmar TC11 may have been marketed as a versatile compact tractor, but in reality, it often proved to be more aggravation than aid. Underneath its modest exterior lay a tiny 3-cylinder diesel that struggled to deliver anything beyond minimal torque, perfect for nothing more than kindergarten-level chores and totally inadequate for truly useful loader or tillage work. The transmission, a basic gear setup, wasn't remotely smooth. Shifts were stiff, imprecise, and frequently required wrestling the levers into place, especially under load. The hydraulic flow was paltry, barely enough to power a small backhoe, and hydraulic leaks were disturbingly common, turning daily tasks into constant maintenance hunts. Worse, the operator station felt cobbled together. A rigid, exposed seat offered zero shock absorption, the pedal layout was awkward and cramped, and heat and noise from the engine penetrated the cab area unchecked. Spare parts were hard to find outside specialized Yanmar dealers, meaning even minor repairs led to frustrating delays. The TC11's lightweight frame contributed to poor stability under any real load, and its low ground clearance turned even modest terrain into a clearance hazard. In short, the Yanmar TC11 aimed for economy and agility, but ended up delivering neither, leaving owners wishing they'd opted for something a bit more powerful, rugged, and genuinely functional. Number 9. The Farmel F20 was a step forward in its 1932 debut, but even by mid-century standards, it quickly revealed a host of frustrating flaws that made it difficult and sometimes dangerous to operate. Its four-cylinder engine offered modest power, around 29 horsepower, but lacked versatility and torque under varying loads, making plowing and cultivating inefficient and sluggish. The hand-start system, especially in cold weather, turned routine operation into a test of patience and endurance. The absence of live PTO or hydraulics meant operators were stuck with limited implement control and frequent interruptions during work. Perhaps worst of all was the steering and braking. Mechanical brakes were weak and prone to fading, while the narrow front end combined with a high center of gravity made the F20 notoriously unstable on hills or uneven ground. Operator comfort was non-existent. A stiff metal seat, exposed controls, and constant vibration wore users down quickly. Maintenance access was crude, and lubrication points were poorly placed, often leading to premature wear if servicing was skipped. Though innovative at the time, the F20 aged poorly, offering little adaptability as equipment standards evolved. For many farmers, it was a machine that required constant compromise and caution, one that highlighted the hard learning curve of early mechanized farming more than it delivered practical, long-term value. Number 8. The John Deere 2010 is widely regarded as one of the worst tractors ever released by the company, plagued with a host of problems that turned ownership into a long-term headache. Introduced in the early 1960s as part of Deere's bold new generation lineup, it promised modern features but delivered serious reliability issues from day one. The engine, a four-cylinder with wet sleeves, was prone to coolant leakage and cylinder liner movement, leading to major internal failures even under moderate use. The transmission was clunky and unreliable, with gear synchronizers that wore out quickly and shifting that felt anything but smooth. Hydraulics were underpowered and slow to respond, making loader or implement work frustrating and inefficient. Steering and brakes were mechanical nightmares, stiff, inconsistent, and sometimes outright dangerous on slopes or when hauling loads. Worse yet, the tractor was difficult to service. Cramped engine access, finicky linkages, and hard-to-source parts turned even routine maintenance into a chore. Operators complained of poor ergonomics, loud operation, and uncomfortable seating, which only added to the fatigue of running a machine that seemed to resist cooperation at every turn. In a lineup that included some of Deere's greatest hits, the 2010 stands out as a spectacular miss, a poorly engineered, underperforming tractor that nearly tarnished the company's reputation. Number 7. The International Harvester 560 is infamous not just for its flaws, but for the way those flaws nearly shattered IH's dominance in the tractor market. Released in 1958 with fanfare, it boasted more horsepower and updated styling, but beneath that modern shell was the fatal mistake of reusing the rear end and final drive from older models like the Farmel M. These components weren't designed to handle the 560's 50-plus horsepower engine, leading to catastrophic failures under heavy use. Final drives would shatter, differentials would seize, and breakdowns became routine for farmers who expected reliability. IH's slow response and initial refusal to acknowledge the issue only deepened frustration and customer distrust. The 560 also suffered from a weak hydraulic system and a torque amplifier that frequently failed, turning what should have been an asset into a constant maintenance point. Ergonomics were outdated, comfort was minimal, and safety features were lacking even by the standards of the time. While later updates improved durability, the damage to IH's reputation was already done, allowing competitors like John Deere to surge ahead. The 560 wasn't just a mechanical failure. It was a cautionary tale of corporate overconfidence and rushed engineering, marking the start of IH's long decline from industry leader to troubled legacy. Number 6. The case of the 1470. Traction King may have looked like a bold step into four-wheel drive territory in the early 1970s, but in reality, it was a deeply flawed tractor that exposed just how unprepared Case was for the demands of this market. Its power came from a 6-cylinder diesel that delivered respectable horsepower on paper, around 160. But it was mated to a transmission and drivetrain setup that struggled under real field conditions. The shift pattern was awkward, and the transmission lacked the smoothness or durability found in competitors like Stiger or Versatile. The full-time four-wheel drive system was prone to binding and gear wear, especially when turning under load, leading to frequent breakdowns. Steering was vague and slow, making the articulated frame hard to handle precisely, especially in tight headlands. Operator comfort was poor. The cab was noisy, poorly insulated, and prone to rattling with minimal visibility due to the bulky hood and articulation pivot. Hydraulic capacity was underwhelming, often struggling to power larger implements reliably. Worst of all, maintenance was a constant headache. Parts were difficult to access, and the service network lacked the experience to properly support the new design. While the 1470 aimed to modernize Case's lineup, it instead became a mechanical mess, remembered more for its flaws than its traction. Number 5. The Stiger Puma 1000 was a rare miscalculation from a brand known for rugged four-wheel drive machines, and it showed just how badly a good idea could be dragged down by poor execution. Introduced in the early 1980s as a compact articulated tractor, it featured a 140 horsepower Allis-Chalmers 6-cylinder diesel engine that was woefully underpowered for the tractor's size and class. Instead of offering the nimble strength small operations needed, the Puma lumbered through tasks, frequently bogging down under modest loads. The articulation system, meant to aid maneuverability, was jerky and unstable at lower speeds, and maintenance on its pivot points became a recurring nightmare. Visibility from the cab was compromised by the rear engine layout, and the ride quality was abysmal. No suspension and minimal operator comfort turned long days into exhausting marathons. Worse still, the drivetrain was mismatched to the engine output, causing premature wear and constant repair headaches. Parts were hard to source, and dealer support was inconsistent at best. While Stiger's larger models earned respect in the field, the Puma 1000 felt like a scaled-down afterthought, awkwardly balanced, frustrating to operate, and outclassed by nearly every competitor. It stands today as a cautionary example of how even a trusted name can deliver a machine that simply misses the mark. Number 4. The Ford 6000 was supposed to be a flagship of innovation in the early 1960s, but it quickly became one of the biggest blunders in Ford's agricultural history. It featured the advanced Selecto-Speed powershift transmission, which, while conceptually ahead of its time, was plagued by clunky shifts, slipping clutch packs, and unpredictable failure modes that left farmers stranded midfield. Its 6-cylinder engine, designed for more power, turned out to be a mechanical nightmare, prone to overheating, poor oil circulation, and cracked blocks, sometimes within the first few hundred hours. Hydraulics were weak and unreliable, struggling to lift even mid-sized implements consistently, while the rear end simply couldn't handle the engine's torque without showing signs of premature wear. Ergonomically, the operator station was cluttered and awkward, with poor visibility and minimal comfort. Worse still, early failures forced Ford into an embarrassing recall and redesign campaign, rebranding it as the Commander 6000, but the damage was done. Trust eroded quickly, parts support lagged behind, and the tractor earned a reputation for unreliability that overshadowed any innovation it offered. Rather than leading the field, the Ford 6000 became a mechanical warning label, proof that rushed technology and poor execution can sink even the most ambitious designs. Number 3. The versatile 1150. Big Roy may be one of the most iconic-looking tractors ever built, but it was far more showpiece than serious machine, and its flaws were as massive as its size. Created in 1977 as a one-off concept with a 12-cylinder Cummins engine pumping out over 600 horsepower, Big Roy looked ready to redefine large-scale farming, but its performance proved otherwise. The rear-mounted engine caused significant weight distribution problems, making traction uneven and soil compaction a real issue. Cooling the massive engine was a challenge, especially since airflow was restricted behind the cab, leading to frequent overheating concerns. Visibility was another major flaw. The huge body and unusual layout made it nearly impossible for operators to see rear implements or navigate tight field corners with any confidence. Maintenance was nothing short of a nightmare, with panels everywhere and key engine components buried behind layers of metal and framework. Transporting it was a logistical problem due to its oversized width and non-folding frame. Ultimately, Big Roy was a concept that lived better in brochures than in the field. While it captured attention at shows, it failed to offer real-world practicality or performance, proving that in tractors, as in farming, bigger is not always better. Number 2. The Porsche Diesel Jr. 108 might carry an iconic automotive name, but as a working tractor, it left much to be desired. Built in the 1950s and early 1960s, it was powered by a tiny single-cylinder, air-cooled diesel engine producing just over 15 horsepower, barely enough for light tillage or garden use. The engine ran rough, vibrated heavily, and made cold starts an agonizing chore, especially in damp or cold conditions where glow plug performance was poor. Its unique rear engine layout made balance tricky, and the minimal weight over the drive wheels led to traction issues in anything but ideal soil. Hydraulics were either absent or severely limited depending on the model year, reducing its usefulness with modern implements. The operator experience was equally harsh. A rigid steel seat, zero suspension, and uninsulated controls meant noise and discomfort dominated every work session. Worse still, parts availability outside Europe was practically non-existent, turning even basic repairs into long delays or custom fabrication jobs. The controls were cramped and unintuitive, and its slow ground speed made transport inefficient. While the Junior 108 may appeal to collectors for its quirky charm and design pedigree, in real-world farming, it was underpowered, impractical, and more a novelty than a truly functional piece of equipment. Number 1. The John Deere 720. Diesel may have been a technological leap in the 1950s, but behind its reputation as a powerhouse lay a tractor that was cumbersome, frustrating, and often overcomplicated for daily use. At its heart was a massive two-cylinder diesel engine that delivered impressive torque, but it did so with intense vibration, deafening noise, and a narrow power band that made gear selection critical and unforgiving. Operating the 720 wasn't straightforward either. Unlike modern diesels, this one required a separate two-cylinder gasoline pony motor just to start. That pony motor was notorious for being temperamental, especially in cold weather, often needing its own attention with spark plugs, fuel mix, and pull start rituals before the diesel could even think about turning over. This added layer of complexity meant starting the tractor could take longer than the job itself. The power steering and hydraulic systems, while progressive on paper, were clunky and inconsistent in real fieldwork, especially with wear. Oil leaks were common, steering could be vague, and the brakes lacked the confidence needed on hills or when hauling loads. Visibility was average, but operator comfort was poor. No cab, hard steel seat, minimal weather protection, and a constant roar from the side exhaust made long hours miserable. Maneuverability suffered due to its length and narrow front axle, and tight headlands or row crop turns often became a multi-step process. Maintenance access, especially around the starting system and rear end, was frustrating and time-consuming. While the 720 diesel was certainly a symbol of raw pulling power, it was also a symbol of how Deere's traditional two-cylinder layout had reached its limit. It was a brute to work with, loud, stiff, overly complex to start, and tough to live with. For many, it was less a dependable partner and more a daily test of endurance and patience.